Well, hello. Let's Talk Tuesday family. How are you? It's so good to see you. We were gone last week for a really fun reason, which we'll be talking to my guest in just a moment. But it's good to see you, Brooklyn. Hi, Brooklyn. Hi, Venus. So good to see you guys. Adam, love to see you there, Adam. Colin, Ulysses. So good to see you guys. Hope you've had a good week so far, the beginning of your week, and we are well into spring. Warmer weather for me. I hope it is for you. Hi, Rhonda and Carrie. Good to see you guys. I'm glad that you are here because you are going to absolutely love who we're talking to tonight. Hi, Diane and Keys and Jana. So great to see you. Hi, Joey. Happy spring. Yes, happy spring. Hi, Emily. Um, hi, Brad. So, we're going to talk to, hi, Robin. We're going to talk to a very good friend of mine who I have known for, I believe, almost 20 years now. And man, we go way back, a lot of stories to tell. But I promise you, I'm going to try to keep from spending the hour just reminiscing with him because I totally could. And you'd love that too because he's super interesting. But he is an incredibly talented and gifted filmmaker. He's a showrunner of the series that just came out, Blue Ridge. We'll talk about that a little bit more when Gary is with us. He is a producer and he is now the director of development or VP of development for INSP scripted content. He'll tell me what the official title is, I'm sure, but man, he writes, he directs, he produces, he's a showrunner. So any of the questions that you guys have, and I'm going to try to touch on each of those areas with him because he is such a unique individual in that he does all of those things. And I can attest he does them all really, really well. And so I'd love you to welcome my friend Gary Wheeler.
What's up, Bev?
Gary Wheeler, how are you? What a joy. What a joy to get to talk to you for a little while.
Well, it's a joy to get to see you. We actually talk a good bit, but it's good to
Right.
see you here. We talk in my driveway, we talk on my
Yes.
commutes, we talk all the time.
Yeah, so
Um,
Gary is in North Carolina, and so when we're working on a project or when we're just touching base, it's usually I get a call on his commute home. So we talk from whenever the point he calls to he says, "Okay, just pulled in my driveway," and then then we know, okay, that's the conversation for today.
and it's a decent commute,
Yep.
and those conversations are like a box of chocolates, Bev. Like
Yes.
we could just go and it's usually we've got like 3 or 4 things that we've gotta answer, right?
Right. Right.
And then like,
Yeah.
which I mean you could say if this is true or not, but I usually make those decisions really quick and
He
fast.
does.
So,
He
very
does.
pretty decisive,
He
but then the
really
rest of
does.
it's, "Oh, look at that car. Oh," and then, but I'm
And
glad
we have
I was gonna say I
we've
love your trailer. I was wondering as
oh,
I sat in the waiting room, I was like, am I gonna is it just gonna be because you and I audition a lot of people now virtually,
yes.
and
Right.
and I've always been sympathetic to actors, and so, I'm sitting here, I'm like, "Oh, am I just gonna pop on the screen, and then I'm gonna have to be like, energized," which might not be a problem for me, but am I just gonna pop up? And so I was actually really excited to, see your whole spiel and trailer,
That is
and
Diego. That is my friend Diego. I'm telling you,
my
he's
friend
the
Diego, he's great.
yes, our
He's
friend Diego.
our friend
Exactly. I
Diego.
love
Yes, right,
that
yes.
he's our friend now too. So, um, uh, Robin, I see you say you can't wait to relocate to North Carolina to be near your kids in the industry there. Well, that's awesome. We'll have one more talented
What
actress in the
part? Do
North
we know what
Carolina.
part? What part of North
Yeah, what
Carolina?
part, Robin? Let us know what part of North Carolina you're going to be in. Lots of people are saying hi to you. Ivy Jones says, "Yay, another North Carolina neighbor." That's her home state.
Nice.
Hello from Detroit. We have all over. So, yeah. Okay, so I Diego says, "I already know Gary is gonna drop gems, so make sure to share this."
Yeah.
So, I figured kind of I wanna just touch on all of those areas that you work in because you are a rare bird in that you write, direct, produce, and now you basically run the scripted department of a studio, right? Or of a network, right? What's your
It's I would call it a studio, is what
Yeah,
we really do because we have various there's a there's a part that works for the network side, but then there's also we have a distribution company, we
yes,
have um a fast channel, which is Cowboy
yes,
Way channel, which is where it
yes.
airs, but really all of our programming airs on every platform we can get it on, so
Yeah,
we
yeah,
have I think we have Christmas movies that did 3 or 4 Netflix deals, and we did a 9-picture deal with Fox Nation and did a bunch of their Christmas movies, and then
yeah.
a lot of our movies on Peacock, Prime, everywhere. And
That's
so
awesome.
yeah, so it's kind of a I said it, I would say it's like being head of production for a
Yes,
slate. It's like
yep.
slates, little
Mhm.
slates that I do. And some from year to year, that slate could look different. And
Yeah.
yeah, but
So when you first it out, so you got a degree was your degree in film?
it's in broadcasting with a minor in English.
Oh,
And I
wow,
got it.
okay.
I got it from Appalachian State University in the mountains of North Carolina. And it's interesting because for most of my life, younger life, I thought I would be a lawyer, which is odd, right? Isn't that
Wow.
funny? I
You would have
know.
been a good lawyer, but it would have
I
been
don't know
so
about that,
wasted.
but it's funny because I was doing an interview and I said that, and the guy said, "Yeah, it's because somebody told you could make money as a lawyer," and I was like, "Yes, that is it." I remembered I had to do this project in like the 8th grade, and it was, how they would send you out to interview somebody,
Yes.
and it was a lawyer, and we're sitting there, and I'm asking him my standard 10 questions that every kid had to ask in middle school, and he says something like, you're supposed to, do you like your job? And he's like, no, but if I wanted to really make money, I would go be a traffic lawyer because you have all these moving violations and you just churn them out, and I was like, I'm going to be a traffic lawyer. So, but anyway, when I was 16, I read a book by called Screenplay by Sid Field. And it was like the scales fell off my eyes. Like I understood it was very practical. And I said, "Oh, I can
Wow.
write. I can do this." And I had a freaky, which you can attest to, Bev, because you've seen it. You're one of the few people who've seen it happen live. Is I just, I was a latchkey kid, and
Mm.
I was raised by a single mom, and from my earliest memories, I would be put in front of the TV when my grandma would babysit me or whatever,
Yep.
and I would watch television. I would memorize names of actors. It was
Mm.
the
Yep.
first thing, and so I have this weird memory of like, oh, you were in this, and you did this one episode of Love Boat, and it was
I
like,
can attest to that. I
yeah, see,
totally can.
yep,
You brought up some people and I've thought, "Really? They were in that?" And
yeah,
sure enough, they
yeah.
were.
And so it's freaky, but it was always there inside me is my point,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
and so I went to Appalachian State because I could get my hands on a camera really quick, and I could
Mm.
I actually and I could get on the radio. And so I had a
Okay.
sportscast my first week on campus, and then I eventually started a movie review, at school. And then
Right.
once I slid over to the TV side of my classes, because most of it was like interview style,
Right.
PM Magazine kind of things, if you remember that show. And once I slid over into doing those kind of things, I went narrative. Everybody
Mm.
else went like in documentary and interview, and I
Mhm.
went dramas, and
Mhm.
I would make short films. And then the English side of it was because I do like to read a lot, but
You
also a lot
do.
I do, yeah, but also
Yes.
a lot of the classes on film history were in the English department. And
Yes.
so
Okay.
and so I took those classes, and then Yeah,
Has that helped you as a writer, those having that film history and English background?
I think it's helped. It's a good question. I think I it's really helped having an English minor, especially in my early days, to make people believe that I could write. And so I could like and so then I could be like, "Hey, well, I'm a minor in English,"
Yeah.
and so that really helped because then it got me some opportunities, right?
Yes. Yes,
And,
absolutely.
and then, I think what helped me the most of all the classes I took, so I took 2 classes in the English department that probably were seminal classes for me in
Mhm.
even in my career.
Mhm.
One was something really simple, it was called business writing, and, we went in there and he said, "Look, I'm gonna teach you how to get a job and how to deal with
Mm.
people." And
Mhm.
so, that has served me well in just
Yeah.
dealing with people, and and it was actually the last class I took. It was the last class I needed to graduate, and it was the last class I took. But the most important class in all of my education was a class I signed up for, and it was called sci-fi films. And so
Mm.
I thought this will, and it was a night class, one night a week, and I get in there, and the guy goes, "I don't know why it's called that. This is actually films of the '60s." And
Oh,
so we're gonna
wow.
watch movies of the '60s because more than any decade in the history of cinema, film reflected society. And
Mm.
so,
Wow.
and the themes that were going on in society could be shown in cinema. And
Mhm.
so, we started with, a 1960s film and finished with a 1969 film, and cinema
Wow.
changed in that time period. So over that course of that 18 weeks or whatever it was, I'd watched 50 1960s movies. And this guy
Yeah.
taught, and he'd actually written a book on the director of named Robert Aldridge, the director of The Dirty Dozen. So we would
Mm.
sit in class, he would play like interviews with Lee Marvin, and
Wow.
talking about, and so it was just this, mountains of North Carolina,
Yes.
and but it was just like a seminal class in my education, and so
Yeah, Venus says, bait and switch for your sci-fi class.
I know, and it's best bait and switch ever, and
There you
and
go.
it was amazing though, and so
Yeah.
yeah, so that's a long answer to a short
No,
question,
that's great.
but that's
So, right now, let's talk a little bit about the writer side of you. You're one of the people who has referenced the book Save the Cat to
mhm.
me several times. You're the reason I purchased it. I'm not a writer, but, someday. Um, but in your mind, what are the books that have been most helpful to you or iconic to you as a writer?
So started with screenplay, Sid Field, which was really a how-to. That was back when you were writing on typewriters, right? And it was
Yes.
tab here and this there, and it was just
Yes.
formatting and but Save the Cat came to me interestingly. It was I
Okay.
had been in LA. I had done a few movies at this point. I think I had done 3 or 4 movies, and I took a meeting with the manager, and he referenced it. He said, "There's this book that's going around called Save the Cat, and everybody's talking about it." And it was written by a gentleman named Blake Snyder. And as soon as I read it, I said, "This is great. It's exactly what I need," because it's just structured perfectly
Yes. Mhm.
what I really saw, and it there's so many parts of it that are perfect for storytellers,
Mhm.
and so at the back of the book he put his email address, and he said, "If you have any questions, email." And I had also read up until that point a lot of books. Another friend of mine, Linda Sager, Making a Good Script
Mm.
Great,
Mhm.
and other things like that. So anyway, I emailed him, "Hey Blake, do you ever consult on scripts?" And he sent
Yeah.
me an email back, and he said yes. And so I hired him to be a script consultant on the first movie you and I ever did, which was The Trial. And that's
Yes.
the first movie that
Wow.
I worked with him on. And there was a marked difference between the movies I'd made before and the
Yeah.
movies and that one. That script, as you remember, we were able to cast that really well because
Yes.
it
Right.
was a very well-written script,
Yeah,
and
it moved. It was another procedural or courtroom
yes,
drama
courtroom
slash
drama.
procedural, both, but,
Yeah,
great characters and good pacing. Yeah, that was really nice. We
and
ended up with Matthew Modine in our lead for
Mhm.
that,
Which is a
and,
story in and of itself, which
I
we could
know.
get into. That's one of my top probably 5 stories of the end. We can tell that a little bit later maybe when we
Yeah,
talk
there
about
you go.
directing, but Blake worked on vividly remember him calling me and saying, "Your your hero needs to fight for something primal at the end." Like,
Mm.
that's that's the thing, and
Mhm.
there's the theme needs to be stated and and all this. But I just remember him reading the first couple drafts of the trial. He gave me this wonderful advice and he just said, "Gary, I read your script. I thought you were just another Yahoo who was hiring me to, to do this. It's actually pretty good, but I'm going to treat you like a professional and I'm going to be
Mhm.
really hard on you, and just tell
Good.
you, what you need here. I'm going to treat you like a
Right.
professional." I just remember those words. And he was just like,
Yeah.
"We need to restructure the ending." He had just written a book called Save the Cat Strikes Back, but it hadn't come out yet. And he
Mm.
said, he talks about a 5-point finale in that book. And he said, "I'm going to
Mhm.
send you that chapter because I think
Mm.
it's going to fix your ending." And
Yeah.
he was right. And then he passed away when we were shooting that movie. And it was and I never got to work with him again. But that's a seminal book in storytelling. And I've read others.
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
actually reading, like I talk about Voracious. I'm actually just happened to have it in the hidden room where I've had to find a place to hide. 'Cause I have 3 teenage daughters and 2 big
And
dogs.
dogs.
Yeah, and so, and this is night for me, but where's it at? It's called the
There we
Nutshell Technique, which is a brand new it's really finding a lot of love,
Wow.
and so a colleague recommended it, and so I'm reading that right now. Another friend of mine, Lavinder Gill, wrote a book recently called Script Cake, and it was like 10 mistakes beginning filmmakers make, screenwriters.
Yeah.
So I'm as I learn. I'm a constant
You
reader,
are.
and
That's
so
I have such great respect for that. The Emily Buckner saying, "Yes, nutshell!"
yeah, right,
Exclamation points.
right. I mean,
Um,
it's highly recommended. Like, it came really highly recommended, and then
yeah.
and so yeah, so I think those were really that's kind of but Save the Cat's really the thing. And the 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 longer I study film, there are parts of those structure with Save the Cat that I would recommend anybody use,
Mhm.
and the
Mhm.
biggest one I think is raising the stakes at the midpoint. Like, the hero, the right smack dab in the middle of the movie, you need something that raises the stakes and changes the hero's journey,
Mm.
and tells you that the back half of the movie is going to be different, and that
Yes.
the
Yes.
hero. And I always knew that, but during the pandemic, I decided for fun to watch the AFI top 100 list, right? And so I watched all 100 of them. Some of them I'm like, "Ah, do I really need to watch this movie?" And some of them I watched with one eye because I was doing something else. And some of them
Right.
but I watched them all. But I had a week where I watched, what did I watch? Jaws, Titanic, The Godfather, and The Sixth Sense, like, over
Wow.
a period of time.
Yes. Yes.
And right smack in the middle of Jaws, I want to say Jaws was the muddiest one, but I think it was like We Need a Bigger Boat somewhere in there,
Mm.
like,
Yeah. Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
this
yeah.
is interesting.
Yeah.
Titanic, they literally hit the iceberg at almost dead mid center of the movie. It's
Wow.
almost like to the minute in The Sixth Sense. Not to spoil it for anybody who's never seen it, but the exact midpoint is I see dead people. He
Yeah.
turns to his mom and says, "I see dead," which changes the movie. And then in The
Totally.
Godfather, which is my second or third favorite movie of all time. It's when Michael Corleone decides to kill the police chief and
Yeah.
go and join the family business.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so and then go to Italy, and it's right smack. It's literally
Yes.
to the minute of it. And so I think that's one of the things, you know.
Now I'm gonna ask you a question. A lot of the people who join us on Tuesdays and a part of our community are people of faith. And one of the things that I find that is actually a little frustrating for me in sort of the faith-based or faith world is we tend to
Don't put
there
me on the
tends to
spot.
be
You're gonna put me on the spot, Bev. Okay, go
no,
ahead.
it's
Go
good, but there tends to be a
ahead.
tendency to wanna shield our young people and shield ourselves from certain content that is sort
Right.
of deemed objectionable or,
Sure.
mainstream or whatever, but yet watching those films are probably one of the best learning classroom experiences you could ever have as a filmmaker. So how do you balance wanting to sort of be careful what you put into your eyes and your ears and your mind versus taking from that content what is useful and helpful. Do you know what I mean? Do you understand
Sure.
what I'm saying?
Yeah, so the salacious things are the things that, I watch with one eye open or skip over, right?
Right,
Like there are just things that I wouldn't want to be exposed to,
right.
uh and at least one of the movies on the top 100 is one I really kind of can't watch, so
Yeah.
but there are amazing things about cinema, that
Mhm.
so my story is that I told you sort of the backstory, right?
Yeah,
Like
right, right, right.
that I was a kid who grew up this way and fell in love and TV and movies and all this other stuff.
Right.
And so I loved movies first. And then when I was 22 or 23, I really had a solid Tarsus moment. Like I had a radical experience, and I went into a car and I came out of a car a different person and I prayed with somebody, so I
Wow.
literally, so if anybody doesn't have hope for somebody in their family, they, just look at my life, right?
Yeah.
And so I had this moment. So for me, that's always been the challenge because I love movies first
Right.
before I love Jesus, and so that's been a challenge. And I've done it the wrong way. I've gone through periods of time where I'm not gonna watch anything that's rated above PG-13, and then
Right.
I got an
Right.
R rating for one of my movies, and I was like, what the heck, It was like, what? How could you do that? I'm like, and so I still
Yeah.
kinda try to keep that in there,
Yeah.
um, and so,
It's a
so anyway.
balance, right?
Mhm.
And it's an
Yeah.
individual I mean, we all know our weaknesses
Mhm.
as people and things that can trigger us. So that's another area where I think sometimes our community can be a little too quick to judge others based on our own kind of lines in the sand, and we expect everyone else's to be the same, but we're all different. And I think God's gifted us differently as far as um how we absorb material and what are those things in our lives in our hearts that are weaknesses. But there is a lot to be learned from classic good well-known films and filmmaking, and you can still learn from those and glean while
Sure.
putting in whatever boundaries you need to, right? Like you
Right.
said, one movie, it's like, I'm not gonna touch that one. I can
Yeah.
learn enough from the other 99. I don't need to
Right.
watch that one.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I watched maybe 2 scenes and said, "Hey, I watched it," and then I was like, "Okay, now
Check
check,
it off.
check," it's like,
There you go.
and there were movies that I just didn't like at all. Like, I'm
Right.
like, and I think if it hadn't been updated, that list has not actually been updated in 20 something years. So
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
there'd be
would
some,
change.
yeah, there's be some. The interesting thing, it probably wouldn't change too much because there hasn't been great cinema in the last 20 years. Like there hasn't been, like, what are the
Yeah,
iconic movies that people will go, now that 20, 30 years from now, we're still gonna be talking about that.
yeah,
But you can
yeah.
learn. I watched every St. Patrick's Day I try to watch, or the week of, or around time, I try to watch The Quiet Man, John Wayne, John Ford,
Yes.
I had a wonderful experience when we were making The Warrant Breakers Law
Yes.
In Tucson, and with Bruce Boxleitner. And so he and
Yes.
I went and saw, gosh, was it the 70th anniversary of that on the big screen together? So I sat next to
Wow.
Bruce and we talked and watched the Quiet Man on the big screen. And so, but I watched a scene. There was a scene that had no dialogue. Like, this was 2
Yeah.
weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and just the tension that they showed. And it's this great scene where John Wayne comes to his house for the first time at night. And he could tell somebody's been there. So if you've never seen the movie, that's a scene. But it's interesting how they show tension and romance with no
Mm.
dialogue. And so you can learn stuff, you know,
Yes.
54, you can still learn things a lot by studying
That's a
cinema.
That's a really good note, though, how romance and love and passion and fierce anger, or what today might be laden with profanity, how did they portray it effectively when they didn't have those options? It was
Right.
still effective. So there's a lot to be learned from looking back to those storytellers and those filmmakers, for sure.
Yeah.
So, okay, so writing, how did your writing change after you found Jesus? After that was the shift in your
I
life?
I wouldn't call myself much of a writer before then, I would say,
Yeah,
that's, most of it has been there. The exciting thing for me, um, this is my 30th year, I think, something like that, 29 or 30th year in the started in 95. Got a
yeah.
paycheck in 1995.
Okay, there you go.
I worked with another one of our friends. I worked for another one of our friends, Chris Cruzen,
Yes.
straight out of college, really.
Yeah.
And really started as a producer with him, and would have thought that probably the least of my skills of the three of them, but it
Wow.
actually was the developed over time as one of my best. And so what I
Yeah.
was about to say is the 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 writing it's been very exciting for me because it's one of the areas that I can notice I've just continued to get better at,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that's been exciting. Like, I'm writing this week. I'm writing scripts this week. As you know, I can't say what for yet, but I'm writing for what the scripts. And
Yeah.
I wrote something today, and I was like, and I sent it off to the team, and somebody was like, "This is good." So that's exciting
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I'm growing and
Yeah.
in that
That's
area
awesome.
even now.
So
And
you started out producing. Did you always know you wanted to direct, or did directing you
that was what
did?
I thought I would do, is what
Okay.
but who doesn't, right? Like, oh, what I really want to do is direct, and with no concept of what that means,
Right, right.
and so, but Chris is an artist, as you know, Chris Cruzen,
Yes.
and
Oh,
so
yeah, very much so.
it just fell naturally to me to fill
Mhm.
in and produce. And we worked on the movie. First movie we did together was called Final Solution, which is a true story
Yeah.
set in South Africa, which is the one that got me the R rating, actually.
Yes,
And
yes.
uh and so so I always thought I would direct. First movie feature I directed was The List. Second was The Trial with you.
Yep, yep.
And then just the opportunities started to present themselves. And sometimes I'll be writing a script or setting a script up to produce and go, I think I want to direct this. This is kind of
Mhm,
me,
mhm.
and
Yeah.
or that I feel like I can contribute to
Mhm.
this. And so that kind of has been good. But I've always been a producer since kind of day one.
Yes.
That's the credit I have the most on
Yeah,
projects, is
yeah, yeah, yeah.
probably as a producer.
Now, going into directing your first movie,
Mhm.
what do you wish you had known? We have a lot of people in our community who are writing or thinking about, trying to get their own products and films off and going. What do you wish you had known going into that first movie?
So there's a great book on directing called I'll Be in My Trailer by
Okay.
I know by
I love it.
John Badham.
Okay.
And he directed Saturday Night Fever. And it's one of those books that you ever have a book that's like is really good, but doesn't get recommended that much. And then you read it and you go,
Mhm.
why isn't everybody reading this? You know?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
it's really about working with actors because that's what the book is about. That's really ultimately what directing comes down to is
Yes.
can you work with actors or not?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite film. I mean, I keep a short list of probably 4 or 5 great, books about these are my favorites on filmmaking,
Yeah. Yeah.
but and that's one of them. And it's actually I can't remember if he told me about this or I told him about this. If you asked him, he'd say he told me, and if you asked me, I'd say I told him. But it's
Yeah.
one of Dallas Jenkins' favorite books
Oh,
about,
okay. I got it. Yeah.
and so, we would each probably claim ownership over who told the other one about it. But I think
Dan?
it's called "I'll Be in My Trailer" by John
Okay.
Badham, and I saw it pop up there.
Yeah,
But
perfect.
so 2 things that I think if you're preparing, um, if you're if you're going to direct your first thing, what I would say, and you know this to be true because I do it, is you should establish a relationship with all your cast as soon as you possibly can.
Yeah.
So you should. I still pester Bev, how many years together? When can I get their cell phone? When can I
Right.
get their cell phone number? When can I get there? Are
Right.
we close? Are we closed? Is the deal
Right.
closed? Because the reason is because I want to send that text that says, "Hey, I'm Gary." Even if I'm producing, "Hey, I'm Gary.
Right.
I'd love to, I'm producing on this. Call me if you have anything." But if you're directing, I want to get, hey, can I have 15 minutes to just talk about the character and talk about
Yeah.
answer any questions that you might have. So any
Yeah.
rapport you can establish, so you're not meeting them on day one. That's number one.
Yeah.
The second part of working with actors, he says this expression that I adapted. I wish I learned it before, but I know it now. Is tailor the role to the actor, not the actor to the role. You gotta think
I
about that for a
love that.
second
Yes.
because so many times, especially when we're younger, or new to it or passionate, right? Like I'd say those are probably the thing, inexperienced, young, or overly, so passionate that we don't realize this is a collaborative art and we're gonna have to let
Right.
other
Right. Right.
people
Right.
get
Right.
involved in our passion.
Yeah.
So we have preconceived notions of what we think the character's going to do. And so we try to take an actor and turn him into that role when we're not going with the natural strengths of the actor.
Right.
And so
So important.
you'll go so much further if you lean into tailoring the role to the actor, not vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that
So true.
that's a real game changer, and I think, and then the other thing is, I'm a big, again, I keep referencing books, but John Wooden, he wrote the famous Blue Book. He's a coach, and he had an expression that failing to prepare is preparing to fail.
Yeah.
So you do just preparation.
Yeah.
Now I know really good directors who don't prepare at all, and they just show up and they're in the moment and they're spontaneous and they are great and
Mhm.
the work is great and the performances are great. Um, I err on the other side. So
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I don't show up on set that day without having read the day's material the night before. It doesn't even, if it's a 16-hour day, if it's a 16-hour day, I'm still gonna go home and
Right.
I'm gonna read the sides for tomorrow. And if there's
Right. Right.
anything that I don't remember, we start doing procedurals, there's some clue that goes back to some time and you got to reread that scene. And so it's, or if you find you have an actor who's there, has a difficult scene that day, you might want to read a couple other things that they've had to do to remind them of that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll underline, oh, I need them to hit that, and
Yeah.
then the other thing, just working with them on the day. I think if you can give actionable notes to a talent,
Mhm.
you give them something to play. And if you can't think of anything to say, um, but you don't want to be vague and you don't want to confuse them because they want to help
Right.
you. An actor
Right.
wants to collaborate. They want to do
Right.
that. It can be as simple as slower, faster. Hey, can you
Mm.
do this thing a little slower?
Mhm.
Can you try this a little faster? Now, especially when you get into series, you're
Yeah.
doing so many episodes, and you can just and you hopefully like each other, so you can say things like,
Right.
hey, can you hit that line where it
Right.
says, whatever, I'm gonna go to the store, can you hit store a little harder, or
Right. Right,
whatever.
right,
And
right.
but it gives them just something to do. Hey, can you play this scene like somebody's listening from outside? And they'll go, oh, great. That's right. That's what I needed,
Yes, and it
and
totally
it's,
yeah, it changes the dynamic,
yeah,
changes things they didn't even know would change just by virtue of the scene being hushed
yes, that's
and
right.
more quiet.
Yeah.
So let's let's kind of turn the other direction for the majority of our community are actors or
Mhm.
actor multi hyphenates, but actor kind of being a core piece. So as a director and a producer, what are you looking for in the actors that you work with? And I realize the director and you may have certain things you're looking for, and the producer and you may have certain things you're looking for. But what are those things that are most valuable to you when you're talking about hiring actors and the actors? Because you and I, obviously, we've now cast a lot of actors, and honestly, there have been some where you're like, yeah, I don't think I'll hire that person again, which is important for me to know, right?
Sure.
It's one thing to go through the audition process, but I need to understand how they did on the day, right? Were
Right.
they able to pull it through on the day? But then you have other actors that you said, yeah, let's like keep that one in mind. And there's actors like Greg Perro and
Mhm.
Tom Proctor that we hire multiple times because they're so great to work with. So what are you looking for, not only in the audition process, but like on the day in the actors that you work with?
It's a good question. I almost wanna turn it on a question on you, because you and I because oh, wow, I was gonna because I'm not sure I'm typical, right? Like, that's the thing.
Yeah, right.
Because I don't I think it's true. I've talked about this a lot. I don't know that I'm probably getting close to the person who's done the most projects with you. We're
Yeah,
probably, it's,
yeah, you're honestly,
I
yes.
mean, it's over a dozen, I think,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and,
Yeah,
because 'cause we've done a couple a year for
right,
since 2017,
right,
plus, and sometimes more than that,
right.
and so that alone is a lot, and,
Exactly.
so we've seen thousands. We've literally seen
Right.
thousands of people together, but the question I would ask you, so a lot of this, before we got on, we talked about some of the things that I'm interested in, and one of them, as you know, is I'm very interested in the Enneagram. For people who are interested in that, and I'm an Enneagram 9, which means I'm a peacemaker. And so,
Yeah.
which is actually one of the reasons I think I've enjoyed. I had a realization that peacemakers, I understand other people's perspectives, so that's why I'm,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
kind of everybody's perspective. That's the weakness, because you can actually go to two different people and they both think you agree with them when you don't agree with either of them. And that can be very frustrating. But I had my eyes open on that, at one point, and
We
I
have
was like,
lots of nines, not lots of people. Jared Hernandez, Suzanne Jennings,
yeah,
um,
we're the peacemakers.
Talia, all
Yeah,
yeah, Bianca are all nines, but we have
yeah,
some threes and some sevens and a
yeah.
six, a two.
Hopefully, they're healthy sevens. Unhealthy sevens can be, woof, and,
Carrie Carrie
uh,
Fabian is I'm guessing a very healthy
okay,
seven,
that's
at least
good,
from what I know of her, but yeah.
and, but so as a writer, I've learned that, uh, I'm reading scripts right now from other writers, as we're doing things, and I'm realizing that a lot of them sound like themselves as they write,
Mm,
the characters. And one of
yes.
the strengths that I've noticed over time, and as a 9 screenwriter, as a screenwriter who's a 9, is I can write in different voices because I understand different perspectives. So for our series, I can
Interesting.
write for Tegan really easily, who's a 17-year-old girl, and I can write because I
Right.
just know motivation. And so anyway, but what I was going to say is a 9, what do you consistently, that's where I'm putting you on the spot. What do you consistently hear about our sets, you know, and
Yeah.
what do you hear from every actor who we ever hire? What do you hear,
Yeah.
Bev?
Well, and I hear, and someone made a comment that I'm going to read because it's exactly this. So Jen Cook said, Gary, you can rest assured that you're doing an amazing job with actors because every actor on the panel at the Blue Ridge premiere raved about how wonderful it was to work with you. And not just working with you, but the set as a whole, the atmosphere of the set, the spirit of the set, the team, the family environment and the team environment that is built and created, the support that they feel that they get, that they're heard and that they're seen and that they're valued is always what I hear.
Right. And so, yeah, and the deepest part of that is peace, right? Is that,
Yes.
you know, they want to feel like, you know, I want to create an environment where good people can do good things, and that,
Mhm.
you know, but as I get older, I'm also starting to realize that totally avoiding conflict is not always a good thing, you know,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
you can have good conflict, you know.
Mhm.
Somebody once said, if you judge a movie's quality by how, you know, judge how good a movie is by how much fun it was to make it, the Cannonball Run would be the best movie ever made, you know, because everybody had such a blast making that film,
Right.
you know. And but like The Godfather was a nightmare, you know,
Right.
and
Right.
yet good art came. So it's kind of an interesting thing.
Right.
So what I value in actors is I do value, you know, attitude.
Mhm.
I do value, you know, we move fast on our
Yep.
sets. You know,
Yep.
we don't, part of that is we don't have a ton of shooting days, you know.
Right.
Part of that is I've built a really strong team over time, that's fast. Like my
Yep.
cinematographer, Brent Christie, is fast, you know, and
Yep.
we are gonna get a lot of setups. It's gonna look good. We don't, you know, but our team works together all the time. So we just have shorthand, and we can do things faster
Mhm.
than other people can probably do
Mhm.
them with a higher quality. And you had Joth Riggs on here a couple
Yeah.
times ago, and Joth's done some movies with us, and every time he submits his schedule to us, he's like, you can't do it in those days. And then he's like, his last day, he's always going, how'd you do it, you know? And it's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we also need people to be prepared.
Yeah.
So that's the thing is, you know, I think the key to an actor is really being prepared, you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
You and I did a couple movies with Neil McDonough,
Right.
and so before the first movie, he was pitching me all these great names. You remember all the people we were going
Yes.
out to? We're not
Oh,
going to bring
yeah.
up their names. We're not going to bring up
No,
their
no,
names.
no.
And so
No, we won't.
he was pitching all these names to us, and at on the last day, he came up to me and he said, "Gary, don't ever hire
There's
any of those people." You know,
they'll never
he said they won't be prepared. They won't come
no.
in, and they won't be off book. You know, they won't be ready to go. And so that's what I need, somebody who knows their lines, knows what scenes we're
Right.
doing, knows what
Right.
you can hit the mark and you can go. You know, and I think
And we
that's
had it.
really important. You know.
Yeah, we had an actor, again, no names, but someone who, on a kind of slower paced set probably would have been fine, but just couldn't get the pacing. So it wasn't a matter of like his audition was fine, that part was
Mhm.
fine, but when it came to the pacing of your set, he couldn't reset himself and get himself paced up enough to really be able to bring it. It rattled him, you know?
Mhm.
And I think if anyone researched you prior to working with you, they would see, um, by watching the films and by seeing how much content you're creating, that you must work at a pace that's pretty, you know, pretty strong.
Mhm.
So those are the things that people can do, actors can do, researching ahead of time, trying to understand the environment that they're going into and being ready for that, because really wonderful actors can be caught off guard and then it throws them and they can't they can't do it, and it doesn't mean they're not talented. It just
Mm.
means they weren't ready to work at that pace.
No, and that's and I think what people like about that is, and I shared this, Jen mentioned it, and you were there on the panel, but we did a panel for Blue Ridge, and we move fast, but we don't actually work super long hours. Like, we
Right.
try to keep
Right.
10-hour days, because I think everybody should have a life,
Right. Right.
and so we try to work it hard. We pretty steadfast to that,
Yeah.
and so you just got to know your lines, know your lines,
Right.
hit your marks, right? Like,
Right.
that's Tom Hanks, right?
And if
Know
you
your
and if
lines.
you say you can ride a horse, you better be able to ride a
Man, that's
horse,
a
at least
whole
on
other story.
Gary's set.
That's a whole other story, because we've done a bunch of westerns, and you've
Right.
been in rooms when I ask them if they can ride a horse, and the old adage, just fake it till you make it, and lie as an actor and say you can, remember the days when you and I would sit in your office, and we would, I would always read the headshots. I don't know if you remember that. And I would
Right.
ask
Yeah,
you
oh, yeah,
some
absolutely.
random question at the bottom. So, you play racquetball, what is that? Or you play, and
Yeah.
and then some people they would actually do it, and
Right.
but
Right.
horse, you can't play around with horse riding, and I
Right.
think 100% of the accidents on my sets over the years, which isn't many, I've been
Right.
horse related, because good horsemen
Right.
will fall,
Right. Right.
and so don't in general, I say it's okay to fake it till you make it, but I would say don't ever do it with horses,
Yeah.
because it's going to
No.
be so. Even if you think you grew up riding, everybody wants to do a western,
Right.
right? Everybody wants to do a western. All actors want to do cowboys, right? But if you read the script and there's a lot of horse work for your character that you're auditioning for, I would highly encourage you to not try and learn horseback riding for the role in 2 weeks, like, just say you can't, don't do it,
Just admit it. Right.
and
Exactly.
be the
Exactly.
person in the saloon, who doesn't have to ride the horse, or the
Right.
guy there, because it's gonna be, you're gonna be disappointed in your performance. You're
Well,
gonna,
and it costs you
uh,
money because then all of a sudden you're having to stunt double someone you
yeah.
didn't think you were gonna have to, right?
Mhm.
You're calling in a stunt double when you thought the person said they wrote,
Yeah, and when you can ride, it gives you options. When you have skills, so we were doing Farhaven, and uh, Chris Mulkey comes
yeah,
up to me, and Chris Mulkey, he was in the Long Riders with, the Carradine brothers, famous Western Walter Hill. So he can ride. He's been riding for 50 years. And
right.
we had this scene in this great open Western town, Mezcal, Arizona. And Chris comes up and he goes, Gary, um, I think my character would be on his horse. And it wasn't written that way. And he
Right,
said I
okay.
could be like, he was the sheriff. He said
Yeah.
I could be out in the range, and I could ride up. And so we did the whole scene, because it was a power scene. He was in power
Yes.
over a prisoner. And so he's like, and it gave me this shooting dynamic, where
Yeah.
the people were up, he was up and the people were down. And but he brought the horse in, hit the mark, did the scene, 2 takes, turned around and rode off,
Yeah,
at a
see, you
gallop.
can do that.
You
Right.
can do that, right? And that you're
Right.
not gonna have options if you can't, if you
Yeah.
can't do that. So don't lie about don't lie about horse riding. That's the one I'll tell you right now,
There's your lesson.
That's your
So
lesson.
Lance Nichols, we're gonna talk about Blue Ridge now. Lance Nichols is on here. Hi,
What's
Lance,
up,
we love you.
Lance?
He said, "I propose a husband for Mayor Brady. She's hiding
He's been saying
something."
that. Odessa Feaster, one of my favorite people in the world, is the mayor.
Odessa's on here too,
She
actually.
is?
Yes.
Oh, Odessa. I love Odessa. She's amazing. She loves to give Jonathan Sheck AK actually, she loves to give Justin Wise a hard time, our sheriff. And she's one of the great because he's the hero, right? And the hero
Right.
needs obstacles. And Mayor
Right.
Brady, played by Odessa, is an obstacle, but a
Yeah.
good-hearted obstacle,
Right. She's
and
tough though, man. You're not getting anything by her.
she just needs to come into a scene. Okay, so I'll talk about Odessa for a second since she's here. One of the things that Odessa does is she has just again tailor the role to the actor, not the actor to the role. Odessa has a strength as a human. She has a kindness as a human, but she has a authority. And so someone like her who really is supporting the lead, because
Right.
he's the sheriff, she's the mayor. She's got to be able to come in, do her scene, know her lines, but she's just her presence brings a level of authority that
Mhm.
you know
Yep.
presents a kerfuffle for him,
Yes.
and which is what you want for the
Mhm.
hero. Conflict. You just want conflict,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Anytime she walks in, it's like, okay,
yeah,
what's gonna happen now?
and
Yeah.
she does things, particularly the series, that are not easy on him, and
Right.
so
Right.
in a good
So
way. I
how
mean,
did
that's
Blue Ridge come about? Tell me about Blue Ridge and now Blue Ridge the series.
so 2019 we shot it. As I said, I went to the college in the mountains of North Carolina, and I just always felt like, I referenced Justified a lot. I have like, what are the show? There's certain shows that if we audition somebody and they were on that show,
Yes.
I'll be like,
Longmire,
Longmire, Justified.
Justified. Yep.
What's some of the other? I can't remember if they're a pro wrestler. I
Gary
think
loves
I
wrestling,
do
pro
love
wrestling.
wrestling.
I
I
love
do
it.
love wrestling, and you know why? Because they are coachable. They're
Mm.
they're uh, they're tr- they're very much they want um they want notes,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah, yeah,
used
yeah.
to hitting marks. They're used to fast too,
Yes. Yeah.
because they have to change on the fly, and
Yeah.
they may have a segment where they go, it was supposed to be a 15-minute match and now it's got to be 7,
Yeah.
and they've
Yep.
got
Yep.
to
Yep.
improvise it. And so they just have athletes in general are used to a higher level of effort.
Yeah.
But so Blue Ridge so I always wanted to make something in the mountains of North Carolina. Doug Butts, our executive producer, said, I want a show that's like Longmire, Justified meets Blue Bloods, and that's so we kind of created this world around that. We did what's called a backdoor pilot, which is a movie that if it works will turn it into a series. So we
Okay.
knew kind of immediately the movie was good, like when we shot
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
But then this little thing called COVID hit, right in the middle of it. And so that slowed the
Crazy.
release down. And then we
Right.
released it. It was a success. And then we were getting ready to shoot it. And so then we decided we want to make a series. But then that took a year. And then we pushed
Right.
it back a year. And so anyway, it just did really well. It has performed really well on every platform. It's on everywhere right now. Peacock Prime, the movie is, and it just has done really well.
Yeah, so if you guys haven't seen Blue Ridge the movie, which
Right.
started it all,
Mhm.
you can see it on all those streaming services. Check it out before you start to watch the series, which will tell you how you can see that in just a minute. But
Sure.
so yeah, so you always had a mindset towards a series, kind of where these characters you
Right.
wrote the movie with the the series being a possibility then, is that correct?
It is correct. It's interesting. I'll go back, Bev, because we do have a lot of people of faith here. I'll go
Yeah.
back to 2010.
Okay.
So in 2008, you and I were set to make the trial. And then we lost all the money because of a Ponzi scheme and had to call, and I called you and said,
I
and so
still remember that call. I know exactly where I was on the freeway when I got that call.
what did I
Just
say? What did I say? I said, we lost the money, but you're getting paid, right? I think those are the two things. I think the two things I said. I did want to assure you that you were getting paid
Yeah.
and that we were, and we paid you. I think that
And well,
was.
and then you're like, and it's not that just we lost the money. It was like it's a Ponzi scheme. Like he's being indicted, and the FBI is raiding his office at the moment, and
And it was it was cast. It was completely
yeah, oh,
cast,
fully cast, yeah,
other than the lead. If you remember,
yes,
here's the Matthew Modine story, very, very short order, and what I'll say is, prior to this, I had done a movie in South Africa with John Connie, who was a really well-known actor in South Africa, and that then I did a movie called The List, and when it came down to getting our villain, we could end up with Malcolm McDowell. But the reason we got Malcolm McDowell was because he knew who John Connie was, and
right,
then I was making the trial, and so you and I, we had a list of 83 names, and we already had a deal with 20th Century Fox before we shot, for the
yeah,
trial.
right,
And they liked, their number one was Matthew Modine. And so we called him, and we called his agent, and he was getting ready to do a play at the Geffen Theater. Matthew
yeah,
Modine Saves the Alpacas. And so that was the name of the play. So he went out to do this. He was unavailable. So then we
right,
cast the entire other cast. It's a courtroom drama. And then we cast the entire other cast, lost them all. One of them actually ended up, I won't get in names because like someone became huge stars. Remember some
huge,
of the
yes,
younger,
oh,
and one
absolutely,
of them was
2
an
of them
Oscar nominee.
did,
Two of them are, one's an Oscar nominee and one's like a major
yep,
star.
oh, yeah,
And they were
big
both
time,
big time, and they were both cast. And then a lot of the other people were big stars, right? And so we
yep,
lost them all. Malcolm was supposed to do it, like it was everybody. And then and I had to start from scratch. And 6 months later, I think we raised just enough money to make it,
yeah, the budget
and
changed
oh, it
drastically.
was
You 'cause that
terrible.
that was the other, like, I got good news and bad news. So we're gonna make it. Like, "Ooh, awesome,"
Yeah.
but for half the budget.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we couldn't, because we didn't have the money. We ended up
Right,
going from Matthew Modine, number 1, and we ended up on the list of 83 names at like number 89. Like you remember, we could not get
right,
anybody to read it for the budget we had and all this other stuff. And the short window, the window was
right.
closing because it was getting toward
Oh,
the end,
right. It was
of the
so
year.
fast.
It was
Yep.
going toward the end of the year, and we weren't. And I remember, you've been a part of one of my happiest moments in my career, because I remember, because it came from the valley, right? Like I was in the valley, so I went to bed and
Yes.
thought I was going to cancel the shoot because I was like, I can't. We didn't even have all of our money in the bank yet, and I couldn't do all this
Yep.
stuff. And I went to bed, and you and I had been talking about an actor, and he refused at the last minute. He refused to even read the script because we wouldn't give him like 3 weeks to read it. And I was just like,
Right.
I can't even get. I've gone from Golden Globe nominee at Matthew
Yes.
Modine to the guy who did one episode of Love Boat, right? And that's the one we're talking. And we couldn't get this guy to even read the script. And then I woke up in the morning to a call, a voice message from you, and you said, "You're not going to believe this, but Matthew's play is finished." And his agent called and said, "Is that script still available?" Because he's interested in doing it. And within a day, we had him, and he was on we
Yes.
had to change the schedule. We got Robert
Yes.
Forster to take the place, and we did it, and we were
Yep.
on our way. And
That's crazy.
he about halfway through the shoot, I asked him, "Why'd you do this? Like, why'd you decide to ultimately do this? You had a short window and all this other
Right.
stuff when you could do this." He said, "Well, I just looked up who you'd worked with, and the only person I knew really well was because I was a Kubrick lead for Full Metal Jacket, and Malcolm was a Kubrick lead for Clockwork Orange. And
Yes.
so I made one phone call, and Malcolm said, 'It's a great script. It's a great part. You should do it, and you'll love it.'" And so it was like, but God opened the door for me to get
Yes,
Malcolm. I wouldn't have had
absolutely.
Malcolm in the first
No,
place. Like it was
no.
supernatural how we ended up. So
Yes.
anyway, I finished that movie. I was supposed to make another movie for the studio. It was a big movie. I won't say what the name is because it actually finally got made recently
Okay.
by
Yes.
friends of ours. You know which one it is.
Yes.
And then it all fell apart. And I remember I was walking through my church, taking my girls to Sunday school, and I just said, this is 2011, I guess, and I just said, I really think I would do good in TV. I think it's more who I am, but I have no contacts there.
Yeah.
God, you're gonna have to open up some door. And again, at this point, I was gonna do something bigger, and it fell apart. And then I got this phone call that a very, very small television Christmas movie needed a director. They were making some changes, and did I want to do it? And I called one of my mentors, and he said, Gary, nothing bad happens when you work, so go do it.
Yeah.
And so it was a 13-day Christmas movie, and that movie became The Heart of Christmas, which was with Candace Cameron Bure, and it got nominated for a Primetime Emmy. And then the network immediately hired me for another one, which was Somebody's Child with Lynn Whitfield and Michael Jai White. And then, that fell into another one, which was The Perfect Summer, and then another one, and another one, another one. And so, so all of a sudden I found myself in TV, is my point. And so, so I always
all of a sudden, but God totally knew.
Exactly. So, that we're now 14 years later from that point, and I don't know how many 40 movies, and one series, but it's weird, because what I could say is, I mean, I've done a lot of movies. We hadn't even talked about like War Room. I was one of the producers on War Room, and a lot of other things in the faith space. But it's weird to find myself and hopeful to find myself at 54, 30 years at the business, and to have done something like season 1 of Blue Ridge and go. And I'm not blowing smoke, because you were there at the screening. Other people, Jen was there, and Odessa's seen it,
Right.
It's good. Like, it's universally good,
Fun.
Right.
Yeah, great to watch. Fun characters. It is. It
It's
is
like,
good. Jen saying yes, exclamation point.
Yeah, like, it's not bad, like, and then it's
No,
like,
right.
and
No, you did it. You did it.
yeah, and
Like, you
that's
did a great thing, and Jonathan Sheck is great in it. I'm not tooting my own horn, because ultimately you make the final
Toot it.
cast decisions,
Toot
but
it.
our cast is great. Our cast is really, really good.
Yes.
And so Jen says it's really good, and Odessa says it's so good. But it's true. It's kind of like, for such a time as this,
That's exactly what
everything sort of led to this being the right time for the series, for the network, for, the studio, all of it. It's the right time.
Well, one of the things, and I said this the other night, because a lot of people are predicting, and this is probably good stuff to end on, right? Like, because I see we got a Diego telling us it's time to wrap up. He's doing the clock. I'm like, no, Diego, you're not going to play us off the Oscars. You're not going to do it, Diego. But a lot of people. I'm a hopeful guy. Like, that's the number. I want to make movies about hope. A lot of people predict doom and gloom for our industry, and a lot of people see the post-strike. It was hard. There's a lot of people who haven't worked even since Blue Ridge, hardly, and there's this absence of hope. Our country, our world, and what I'm excited about is that we've now gone through the streaming wars, and we're kind of on the other side of it. And now it's kind of crumbling. But what we have all these platforms where content is king all of a sudden again. And we have these opportunities, and a show or a movie doesn't have to die after that first box office release, or it doesn't have to, movies can have long lives, and if you can get in your head that you're not defined by the performance that something does initially, but you're you're defined by something different than that, you're defined by somebody who creates content that is going to make it for a long time. These things have these long lifespans, and so what's exciting is we can do a show like Blue Ridge that starts on the Cowboy Way channel. Just had its first episode this weekend. It'll be every weekend, every Sunday. They'll play
Yeah.
episodes 1 and 2 this coming Sunday. 1 will go before it, and I think it's Sunday at
Okay.
9. And then it's going to hit INSP in July, and then it's going to go to the world, and then there's going to be more, and there's going to be more and more, and so
Right.
I
Right.
think that's the exciting part of where we are right now in our
Yeah.
industry, is that there are opportunities and there's long life.
Now, Cowboy Way is what's called a FAST channel, free
Mhm.
ad-supported streaming
Yep.
television,
Yeah.
right?
I think it's free supported, streaming television. Yeah. And I was wondering my English minor wasn't helping me then, as I was trying to spell. But yes, free ads, streaming
Yeah.
television. And so it's another whole platform. So if you ever go on any of those platforms, like, live TV, and it has all
Mhm.
of these channels, Cowboy Way is one of the first dramatic series that's done for FAST, and it's a whole other streaming platform.
It is. Like, we're gonna start to see a lot of FAST channels. I've already been reading about that as sort of the next
Mhm.
opportunity for growth and
It
for,
is. Oh, and we're
Mhm.
first, right? Like, that's great,
Yep.
like, I would,
Yeah.
for once in our lives, the Christians aren't behind. We're first,
I love it.
and so, no, I think it's great, and I think
Yeah.
it is for such a time as this, and so I think
Yeah, absolutely.
it's very exciting to see, to have this as an opportunity to do it this way. And it's just going to
Yeah.
present more and more opportunities.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Gary, we literally could talk forever and ever. We'll have to do this again,
Sure.
and we could talk the whole time just on the Enneagram thing, because what you know about that and how that dynamic
I
of
still don't know what you
interpersonal
are though, Bev. I
relationship.
don't know what you are though. I'm trying to figure you out,
I have
and,
a book and I started reading it. But I realized the book I got is way too complex. So I need to find like the Enneagrams for Dummies book. Like that's
get,
what I
the road back to you, Ian Morgan Cron. He does a
Okay. All right.
typology
The road
podcast,
back to you.
and Susan Stabile. They wrote, it's kind of a, um, beginner.
Sort of a shorthand
Mhm,
version of it. Yeah, because
mhm.
I
There's just
got one that was like
no,
way
get the
like
road back to
science
you.
in the 1900s and
Yeah.
whew, too
Yeah,
much.
yeah. I'll get it for you and send it to you. But it has a checklist at the beginning of every chapter.
Okay.
If you do this, you might be. If you do this, and you can just go
Together we'll
through.
figure out what the heck I am.
I don't know, I don't know,
I
man,
love it. Well, I have mad respect for you. You are just one of the most talented filmmakers, but more than that, and I mean this with all sincerity, you are an incredible man of God and you are a great leader. And it's just a joy to know you, to be able to work with you. Honestly, a privilege to work with you, but I'm just so glad we've been friends this long, and I'm excited for people to hear more and more from you, because you're thinking about maybe having some opportunities to share more of your wisdom. And I know that everyone, including myself, would benefit from that. So
You're making me cry, Bev. No, I mean, I think it's nice to be doing this as long as we've been doing it, and still
mhm.
have relationship and still care about people, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And that's ultimately, I think that's what I care most about, is I care about people, and I want what's best for them,
yeah.
and so
And
I
you
think,
do. That's the thing. Some people can say that, but you really do. So thank you for joining us. Everyone's been like gems, and they'll go back and replay this. You guys look at the books and all. Oh, Greg Perro. Greg Perro's on here. He says, Gary, am I a healthy 7?
oh, healthy 7. You have a FOMO, Greg. You do have a FOMO. You very much have a FOMO, which I've discovered in the last couple weeks. You
Greg
probably are.
Perro is our right-hand deputy
He
for
is
Blue
RP.
Ridge.
RP. Yeah, and
Yeah.
follow me on Instagram at Gary Wheeler Film, and you can, I'll share Enneagram stuff every now
Yeah,
and
and
again.
he's dropping gems and books. You read like a madman and recommend books. So yes, follow him on Instagram, and you will be the better for it. And I'm the better for having you as my friend. So thank you very, very
I
much,
appreciate
Gary.
you, Bev. You care about people too. I appreciate you very
I
much.
appreciate you too. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, you guys, so much for joining us. Was that not amazing? Honestly, we could talk forever and ever, and we'll try to get him to come back and talk more in depth. We barely talked about Blue Ridge, but as the series unfolds, we'll go into it more and more. But I agree, Emily, part 2 needed. Absolutely. So we'll have him back another time, but go check out his Instagram because he shares great thoughts and insights and books that he's read and quotes from things that he's read. He's constantly learning and growing and soaking in material. And then check out Blue Ridge on Cowboy Way channel. All you have to do is you could go to cowboyway.tv, I think, or search Cowboy channel, Cowboy Way channel. It'll show you where you can find it on most streaming platforms and TVs and things. So check out the series. You'll love it. And I love you guys. Thanks for everything, Diego. Thanks for your help tonight too. And I will see you next week. Probably. So Unsung Hero comes out and I'm going to the premiere next Monday, but hopefully I'll still be able to be with you Tuesday, but we'll confirm either way. But love you guys. Love seeing you here. Thanks for joining us. Have a good week.
Okay, let's go.